everyone. Welcome back to the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos. And if you are new to us, welcome. It's great to have you here. We're really excited about a few different things because we're bringing some just incredible conversations, some real leaders that are painstakingly reshaping the future of health. And we're very focused and passionate about a few different areas. We're passionate about healthcare innovation, leadership, about access, about adoption. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just kind of peel back the curtains a little bit and tell you a little bit more about what we're trying to get done here. So, our focus is about bringing real stories of innovation to life, real stories of leadership to life, not just things that you read in a book, but like real people that are actually getting stuff done. And the aim is to highlight them and share their stories with our community and ultimately with the world. And if you haven't had the opportunity to check out any of our historical interviews, wherever you are, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, please just hit the subscribe button now so that any new interviews come directly to you. So, look, healthcare's got no shortage of data. What it lacks, in my opinion, is follow through. And our next guest has spent his entire career, years, working in that gap. Dr. Khan Siddiqui is the CEO, a founder, and chairman of HOPPR. So Khan is a physician by training who built his career around really that hard truth. When information doesn't move, care doesn't either. And when that happens, people get missed. And this idea has shaped everything that he's done. So before HOPPR, he worked on bringing preventative care into everyday life. Think about, grocery stores, pharmacies, real places where scale exposed what actually works and what quietly breaks. So along the way, he's been invited into every one of the rooms you can think of, panels, big stages where hard conversations happen, hymns, sim, not necessarily for him to sell a vision, but to wrestle with reality. What can we do when the data is there, but the trust isn't? When systems talk, but people still can't act. So that's the tone of today's conversation. That's not necessarily going to be a highlight reel, although I'm going to do my best to try to extract as many stories as possible from Khan because he's a phenomenal storyteller. Um, I want to talk to him about like just judgment, trade-offs, a lot of different stuff. So ideally, we'll talk about what really matters. And if you're looking for easy answers, this probably, I don't know if this is going to be the episode for you. It's going to be probably derive more thought, more questions. But if you care about access, if you care about population health and building things that are durable, that hold up in the real world, then you're going to want to stay with us. So, Khan, it's great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me and doing this.
Yeah, of course, of course. So before we dig into your just amazing background about companies and platforms, I kind of want to start somewhere that's closer to home. You shared with me that your mom's a physician. She still practices today. She still runs a clinic in Pakistan. What was it like growing up and watching her do medicine that way?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Both my parents were physician and both have been my role models, right? And I was having this conversation recently with somebody. She's 89, spends about 6 months with me and 6 months in Pakistan. And when she's there, she runs a clinic. She wishes she could still operate, but I don't think and then when she's here, her entertainment is keeping up with academic literature in OBGYN. So she's up to speed on what the latest things that are happening. And it's pretty fascinating that at her age, has her iPad on and, um, just showing what norm is. I think that's what happened for me. Both my parents being physicians and having this mentality of giving.
Mm.
They both trained in the UK, right? So they didn't have to go back to Pakistan and serve communities. And I always, heard from her when I was young that, you know, be physician to help people and care, not to make money.
Mm,
So if somebody showed up at her clinic or in her practice, didn't have money, like I remember so many times I would get a, she will ping me like, "Hey, go get in the drawer there. Some money sitting here. This patient doesn't have money to go back home." And
mm,
so not only not charge her, but actually pay them to so that they can go back home. Like a lot of these folks, unfortunately show up in those part of the world when no other option is available to them. And then she always has the mentality like, if I can't do anything about it, then why I shouldn't be charging them for giving them bad news. So
mm.
for me, what had happened was that kind of mentality became the norm as I was growing up. Right. So like my expectation, like that became the baseline. You think of when you are working on your healthcare, like in health, it talks about your base, right? What your base
Yeah,
cardio is.
yeah,
Like that became my base cardio of mentality of thinking and how do you create impact. So for me, and then both my parents made an effort to make sure that we are engaged, they're present.
that's right.
Um, so I never felt like, yeah, we saw them work really hard, but that doesn't mean they weren't available to us, right? They attended every single, activity I was doing in school. Me and my both my younger sisters, like going, with my father swimming and doing all the race activities in the evenings and weekends. It was great, but this idea of or the work ethic was very
Yeah,
important and kind of
yeah,
created that foundation where I kind of am. And so I think that's all it is, right? It just has normalized that for me. And hopefully I've done the same thing with my kids. Um, I think a lot of times when we talk about work-life balance, when I joined Microsoft, we'll talk about that more. I struggle with work-life balance type stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
I was having a lot of issues. I have two young kids at the time. And then one of my mentors at Microsoft said, like, I think you're taking this wrong. If you're trying to separate this out, then neither does your work know what's happening in your family life, and neither the family knows what's happening in your work life. And if they don't understand various, stress and work is not constant, right? There are ups and downs.
Yeah, yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing in
yeah.
the family life, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
his guidance was you need to connect them together. And that's what I ended up doing, right? So like our dinner starts like, how was the day? What happened? And we talk pretty detailed, deeply. Like my wife talks about, she's a radiologist too, like what she did, what things were happening, what was frustrating, what was good, what was highlights. The kids talk about the school stuff. I talk about my work stuff. And then same thing at work, we always have with the leadership team talk about, what's happening at our homes. So then we know when an important event is coming up in
Mm.
one of the leaderships. So we know that we don't want to bug them. Like my co-founder Robert had to drop his son off to New York. He's
Yeah,
graduated, he's moving there. We all knew he's doing move on Monday, Tuesday. I'm not going to bug him because he needs to pay
right.
attention to that. And we moved things around to make that work. He didn't have to say anything because we already knew that has happened, right? So
You know what's
that kind of
cool?
come, yeah.
You know what's cool about that is we talk a lot in medicine, we talk about whole person care
Mhm.
and the proactive care. And the
Yeah,
fact that you're able to kind of have this work-life harmony is it's sort of a responsibility. It's as if you're taking the training that your mom and dad demonstrated to you about how to care for people, and you're now just applying that into your businesses and your work life. Obviously, sometimes it's harder for the lessons to kind of cement themselves
yeah,
into, and there's a lot of
exactly.
trial and error. But it tells me that there's a weight and a responsibility that you carry, and you can't just separate the two. Home life and work life, they're commingled, and like you got to pay attention to that. If something's going on at home, like you're obviously not going to bring your
Yeah,
best effort on the work front. So it's cool that there's a level of transparency and like honesty
yeah.
about the ups and downs, highs and lows, because that is life. You're not always winning all the time.
Yeah. You talked about my mom stuff, right? So I think a lot of things that happen involuntarily. The fact that we named our company at at one of the famous women in STEM, Grace Hopper. I wasn't thinking mom, but guess what? That probably was in my back of my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
That why
Yeah.
we honored
Subconsciously. Yeah, of
women and
course.
some questioning that happens, right? I mean, like I told you her story, right? She grew up in a small town with small village with a population of 400. Her parents didn't know how to read, write, couldn't even sign their names, right? And from there, one of the first ones to go to first female to go to college and med school in the 50s, then go abroad to the UK to get trained. Like that was like, and then as I told you last time we spoke, the amount of women who come to me and tell me, like, who are like now 50s and 60s, that
Yeah.
the reason my parents didn't marry me off at age 17, 18 is because of your mom, because she created this role model for the whole community that you know you can go and achieve things and yeah, it has been
What
and
does that feel
the
like
amount
when
of
someone
those
says that to you?
um very proud. I would say that, right, you get that
Yeah.
feeling like that you were privileged to have born to somebody who kind of created that kind of impact in the world, and then you start thinking like, am I going to be able to do the same thing or not? Right. So it kind of like my son said that to my mom won got the gold Figo Gold Award, which is like every 4 years given to one or two women in OBGYN. I
Hmm.
think there are only like 8 or 10, 12 given since the beginning of Figo, and she's one of the one who gotten. And when she received it, um, my my younger son goes, "Grandma, you're raising the bar too high for us. I have to win a Nobel Prize to achieve that kind of impact." So,
Yeah. Yeah. Or
right.
you can
So,
just be like, you know what? I'll have more of that. And to know that
yeah,
you're living basically someone who's like a superhero who's living in
yeah,
your under your roof. We talk a lot about superheroes, but oftentimes the superheroes, um, if you're born into it and you're very fortunate to have a great mom and dad, those are
yeah,
other superheroes. It's kind of
yeah.
cool. Uh, I want to shift gears for a minute because, in our one conversation we had, which is super memorable and I still ponder about it, is at some point your mission became to impact 1 billion people. Like that's not a casual number. Um, do you mind sharing that story
Yeah.
about that?
Sure. So, I built my first enterprise software in high school for exam management system, still in Pakistan. It was like DOS-based systems. This is 80s, right?
Yeah,
I think I was 16 at that time, 15, 16. And that thing got acquired. And as a young, teenager in Pakistan, getting any kind of check for anything was a very,
yeah,
game life-changing thing. So one of the things, and I was a Boy Scout in Pakistan and was involved in a lot of the exchange activities that were happening. So I decided to come to the US as an exchange scout and just travel on my own as a 16-year-old. That was another, we can have a whole episode talking about adventures of a
yeah.
16-year-old Pakistani traveling alone in
Sounds
the
sounds
US.
like sounds like a book, by the way.
Yep. So this is 1988, and I landed in Boston and pretty much, you know, uh, use the cheapest possible routes, ways to move around to New York, to Philadelphia, all the way down to the East Coast. My plan was the whole go down south, back up the West Coast, and then go back type of thing. And I would either stay with some scout family or somebody along the way, and then landed in Miami and was staying at a YMCA, and the whole discussion,
Yeah.
with other kids started happening. What should I be doing? And idea of going to Key West to see the southernmost point of US came up. And it's like, right, which is the Greyhound bus that's going to take me there, or the train? And they go like, you can do this. They do an adventure, take a boat. So I rented a 35-foot sloop and a captain. I mean, obviously for, the captain was 24-year-old. So like, again, also not that mature adult, but for a 16-year-old, that was, somebody who's 8 years older than you, sounded like he's an adult. So, we sailed down to Key West and going through Gulf of Mexico at the time on a moonless night.
Hmm.
First time ever saw the Milky Way. Like never seen it this clear, right? Obviously, you're so far away from civilization
Yeah.
to, and then the captain goes to me like, "What does this make you feel?" And I go like, I thought about it, and I think my answer was insignificant.
Mm.
Right, the scale of billions and billions of stars and galaxies, and it's like you're not even a single peck of sand in the entire beach around the
Yeah.
world. Like that's how small you are. And then he goes, "What are you going to do about it?" And that just somehow triggered something in my brain, and
Mm.
that led to like, all right. And obviously, I had role model at home. Probably that had something to do with it. But
Right.
I woke up next morning and said, like, I gotta go back, and I gotta go figure out how I want to create an impact. And at that time,
Mm.
at that time, the world population was 4 billion, and I thought, like, I'll impact a billion people before I die. That became my goal as a 16, 17. I didn't know how to do it, what to do.
Yeah.
Didn't,
Yeah.
I was too immature, right? As a 16, 17-year-old, you don't know anything.
Well, but when you said that out loud and someone
Mhm.
heard you, like who thought you were crazy?
Um, that's the funny thing. I mean, even this was a 24-year-old young man. He didn't say that, right? He was more acknowledgement, silent acknowledgement. Like, yep,
Mm.
that probably makes sense, right? And I think he's also probably was naive, not understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't compute. Humans are very hard time to understand large numbers. We think them linearly, but they're not. They're exponential kind of activity that needs to happen to get them to a billion. You can't do linearly. You
Yeah.
have to double, 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 double to get to that number. And that's exponential growth, and humans are very bad at thinking about things exponentially. So
So then what does that
um
force you to do differently?
I think the only thing I could think of to create a social impact was becoming a physician. I still didn't know how I'll impact a billion people, but I knew that doing something in healthcare would be easier to understand how I'm impacting the population, right? So
Mm.
even though everybody thought in my family that I'm going to go into do some kind of engineering, computer science, or something like that, because I learned how to code in sixth grade, and that's what I've been doing. But that shift in mindset, and everybody is surprised that I went to med school.
Yeah. You mentioned Microsoft and balance, but I just want to touch on that because you've had multiple tours of duty, I'll call them, in your career, different chapters, different problems.
Mhm.
When you look back, how how do you decide when it's time to stay versus when it's time to move on?
I wish there was an easy answer, right? I'll be honest with you, it was less about, in hindsight, looks like amazing decision. In the moment, it looks like you're insane, right? Like
Okay.
type of thing. So long time
Give me
ago,
an
a mentor,
example.
yeah,
Give
long
me an
time ago, a
example
mentor.
of,
Let me give you some context here, right? Long time ago, a mentor told me, if you don't do anything, the answer is no, right? Default is it's not going to happen.
right.
By even doing one effort, one time try, you increasing the odds of thing getting done. I procrastinate a lot, right? So
Yeah.
that was kind of his guidance. So I've kind of taken that, like, if you're not calling somebody to ask a question, the answer is no, right? So if you want something, the
Yeah.
fact that you made that call, you increase the likelihood, like costing a coin, a 50%, right? Chance that somebody may say yes, type of thing.
Yeah.
So when I was in my residency, you know, um, and again, my wife has always given me this critical feedback on timely kind of nuggets of wisdom that have changed the direction, career. So I was very into MR, doing a lot of MR research, doing pediatric
Hmm.
and fetal cardiac MR, ended up doing the world's first fetal cardiac MR in 2000 before anybody else did. And so one day, she goes like, there are probably 7 people in the world who care about your cardiac MR research. But you go to this IT committee meeting at Geisinger Health System one day a week, and the entire health system sings your songs. You walk in a hallway and everybody knows who you are. Why
Hmm.
are you resisting this informatics route? I was like, I don't know what the career over there is like. Like, I don't even know. Like I don't have any training. Yeah, I learned how to code early, but I didn't go through engineering school. I didn't go to anything. So this is just my general knowledge, and I don't know what kind of career that'll be. And she goes like, that hasn't stopped you from figuring it out, right? So that led to me thinking there needs to be a training program that combines imaging and informatics, and nothing existed at that time. This we're talking about 2000 2001, right?
Yeah.
And led to me calling every single chairman and anybody had anything to do with informatics to ask if there's any training program I can go into. The answer was no. Great idea. When nothing exists, somebody should start one. Unfortunately, we don't have funding or the people to do it. Call everybody from MGH, Brigham, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, Stanford, UCSF, you name it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everybody said no. Finally, doing that for like 2, 3 weeks, I finally, maybe I talked to 50, 55 people, um, and they all said no. Um, 3 weeks later, University of Maryland chair, Vice Chair Elliot Siegel Pages calls me back. He's like, the new chairman's coming on board. His name is Ruben Mesrich. And him and Dean and I were having dinner, and I brought up your call. Like, again, Elliot didn't know who I was. It was a
All
random
right.
call. He didn't know what I looked like, anything, right? It was a random call. There's another whole story on how that happened. And he goes like, we would love to do this, but we want you to come and start the program. So I was still a resident, right? So they wanted to not just train, but come and start the informatics program. And when it stars align, so Elliot's undergrad was in computer science, ended up going to med school at Maryland. Ruben Mesrich was an engineer at RCA on working on LCD displays, and at age
Mm.
37 decided to go to med school. Ended up doing landing at Brigham as a fellow when the first MRI was deployed there. Right,
Well,
right. So we have a two engineering background, becoming a radiologist, recognizing what is needed, and decided to go bet on this one kid from Pakistan to make it happen. Right. So that kind of led to me
yeah.
becoming there. And then obviously, like once somebody gives you that kind of a chance, you would be an idiot to waste it. And I just put 1,000% in it to make it happen. And look where we are.
I mean, you also generated that opportunity. It's not like you sat back and it just landed on your lap.
Yep.
Like you went
Yep.
after it,
Yep.
you know? That's
Yep.
that's
Yep.
really interesting. I want to talk about Higgy for a moment because
Sure.
you worked, it was such a massive scale, real people,
Yep.
data, real consequences. I'm just sort of curious, what did that scale teach you that, no white paper or course could ever teach you?
Yeah. So let me tell you why Higgy, right? I was a
Do
radiologist,
it.
practiced,
Yeah.
at Hopkins and Maryland before I did all this stuff. It's all about my inner why, right? My inner why has become I want to solve problems that people I love have and create a social
Hmm.
impact at the same time. Both my parents had hypertension, and I knew I'm going to get it, and my kid's going to get it. So I've always had. That's why I focus on cardiac MR as my work, as even in radiology. Um, so I always was trying to figure out how I'm going to solve this problem. My billion impact kind of question came in, and I realized as a
Yeah.
radiologist, I don't know how, unless I'm inventing something big and doing something, it's not going to be creating a huge impact. And my work in cardiac MR and how slow it was moving was kind of also showing me that it needs to go faster than this. So when I was in Microsoft, this idea of consumer health kind of started. Microsoft started a company,
Yeah.
this product called Health Vault that was trying to do this stuff. I had a chance to work with the Xbox team, so saw in real time what scale meant. Right, Xbox at that time. This is we're talking about 2010
Mhm.
when Xbox Connect came out. We had 350 million users, 55 million daily active users. That scale doesn't exist in healthcare even today, right?
That's
And we're
crazy.
deploying software in 110 countries in 33 languages every 2 weeks. Like that's kind of gives you the perspective of what real scale is. And then you realize that healthcare is that's not a scale, right? That's like 1 hour worth of activity on Microsoft's platform, right? So kind of started, and that kind of gave me this idea that then when you're building software, if you're not thinking scale upfront, you're not going to be able to scale it harder. Technical debt will be too
Hmm.
high for you to do the stuff, and that's where a lot of the failures happen once rubber hit the road. Even if you have a great product, because of your lack of ability to scale it fast, you lose your reputation, you lose your credibility, and then things fizzle up. There's so many amazing ideas come up and never become successful is one of those reasons. So one thing I learned upfront was, number one is obsessed with the problem, right? What problem you're trying to solve. Number two is yeah, align with your inner why. Number three is the right people, people, process, and make or break the whole thing. Number four is user obsession with user, the user
Hmm.
experience. Number fifth is thinking of building a scale from day one.
Hmm.
And the last one is you have to have a thesis on how you're going to make money. But anyway, so we could have, it took us about 6 months to get the platform ready for Higi when we started.
Yeah.
And I would always get this question like, we're only doing 2 kiosks right now as a pilot. Why are you spending so much time building all this infrastructure? Like, if I don't do this base light right now, we're going to be crippled. It's not going to work, right? So I would always get the board will always, investors will all get upset, like you're delaying all the releases and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But
But that was because you saw what was going on at Microsoft. So you obviously gained that and that
correct.
brought that into Higgy. So you kind of knew like, hey, this is not a nice to have. We're not just doing this
No.
for this is
Yeah.
an absolute must have. This is a critical choke point if we don't
One
get
one
this
of the
right.
things that one of the things we talk about is the patient engagement, right? So it is really hard to create new way to engage because the behavior
Yeah.
change. If you can tie to some activity that's already happening, then you're taking advantage of existing behaviors. So when one of my interns who came up with the idea of the kiosk, right? It's funny thing, like we were trying to build a watch at Higgy. We weren't trying to build a kiosk, and we were just couldn't get the price down because our focus was elderly and low income, and it just couldn't get the price down. And one of this intern on one of the brainstorming session goes like, "What about blood pressure kiosks?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes like, "Those things in the grocery stores and pharmacies." I was like, "They're always broken and never work." He goes, "Exactly." Right. So when we walked down, literally the whole team got up and from the conference room in Chicago, walked down to the CVS. I still remember it's on Dearborn and that corner, I forget, Kinsey and Dearborn, right next to the merchandise mart. We
Yeah.
went in there and we spent the whole day in that CVS. We couldn't believe the number of people using these broken kiosks and talked to the pharmacist. It was like, yeah, there are lines of people standing there. And there was one time there were like 10 people waiting to use that blood pressure machine. I was like, this habit already exists. We just need to
Yeah.
replace with a better machine, right? And then we looked at the numbers and it was insane amount of usage of these things, right? So I knew that the usage is there. You just need to replace it with a better machine, more connected and all this stuff. And you take advantage of existing habit that already exists. And it was a demographic we were targeting. It was all elderly people who were using it and low income people
Yeah.
who were using it. So I think building the foundation up front, I mean, the first kiosks were deployed in CVS in downtown Chicago on July 6th, 2012. Guess what?
That's obviously etched in your mind that date.
Yeah, because we all were down there doing it ourselves, right? Guess
Right.
what? All those kiosks still exist in those 17 locations. How many years later?
Wow.
They've gone through 3 operating system updates, right? Like Windows from 2012 don't exist anymore, right? We've done 3 operating system updates, every 2 weeks software updates, and they're still there.
Wow.
That was I mean, our goal was 5-year life of these kiosks. No, none of us expected to run 15 years.
That's pretty phenomenal.
right? And
I'll
those
have to
things are still
stop in next
running.
time I'm down there.
Yeah, I mean, we deployed 12,000 of those, in North America, both Canada and the US, and it was unbelievable. Ended up doing, I think when I left the Higi, we had crossed 700 million screenings.
That's wild. So now thinking about this type of scale, because you've seen healthcare at the edges, at the center, what do you see? What's the common thing that smart leaders still misunderstand about data?
I think people get stuck in the buzzwords, right? I mean, like, when we started Higi, when we got to the scale where we got to the scale, it was very obvious if we had a data breach, there is no way to recover from it,
Hmm.
right? Because we are holding PHI, right? The First of all, it'll be a DOJ investigation type of thing, right? It'll be a DOJ, $100 per event. When you have 70 million patients PHI, you there's no way to recover from that,
Yeah.
right? You're going to jail and everybody's going home. Basically, that's the answer to that. And you need to make sure you're thinking how you're doing this the right way. You
Hmm.
can't take that lightly. So, um, and there are ways to, like we solved this problem in 2012. Like, how do you secure data? I literally last by week, I got an email, some data hack happened for some stupid thing, you know. It's like in this day and age, right? Like we never took Higgy down for maintenance. That wasn't a thing. Like,
Hmm.
when was the last time Gmail went down for maintenance? Or Facebook went down
Uh,
for maintenance?
yeah. Doesn't happen.
Never, right? Like, I still don't understand when EHR has to go down for maintenance. I just don't get it, right? These problems were solved problems. They were solved problems 15, 20 years ago. It's not that people, and they're not secret IP proprietary stuff. This is common
Right.
knowledge how to secure this stuff, right? It's all about the right people, right processor, right problems to focus on. But what people don't do is go down to first principle thinking. Right? What is first principle thinking? What are the first principle problems, and how do you handle them at the atomic level of a particular problem? These are the learnings I learned in Microsoft. Right? Is how do you actually go to, like, have you asked the five whys of why we're doing it? Um, and um, I think that's what ends up happening where with data, especially.
Right.
Right. I personally believe patients have the right to control what happens with the data. Right. And
Yeah.
if they are making you the custodian of the data, then it's your responsibility to ensure nothing bad happens. Like, Higi was the first one that actually created receipts when you share data with somebody. So Higi had an API, and other people could build apps to pull the data around the stuff. But we would actually send a patient an email saying that this entity requested this information. And here was the reason they said they wanted the data, right? Like, you probably
Hmm.
acknowledge, agreed. We look at the terms and we say agreed, and
Right.
then we disappear. But then what some breach happens, and how do you know that was something you agreed to or not? So we actually would capture that, like why this data was shared, what was the use with this other third party app was asking for, and made sure patient had a record of it, when it happened, what it was, what the timeline was, and all of that stuff. So that if they ever want to go back after that thing, they had a receipt for it.
So they
People still
basically were
don't do
like, they
this.
click the terms and condition, and that's a way of them saying,
Yeah,
consent. Yeah,
yeah.
consenting to this.
There's no receipt for it. You don't get an
Yeah.
email confirmation like you shared this data, and here was the reason you shared this data, and here's what the entity said they will do with the data, and here's a link on the privacy policy. Here's a link of the stuff that now you have record of.
Yeah.
And we were doing this in what, 2013, 2014, like 12 years ago. Come on, people still. I'm still mind boggled that these simple things that you could do, people still not doing.
Yes, I mean, but
So
everybody wants
yeah,
their systems to talk. I mean, what are they not willing to give up to make that happen?
no, I mean, like, there's nothing to give up.
Yeah.
You need to make sure, you've thought through all the problems, you've addressed the need. I mean, at the end of the day, like I'll give you an example of things we did at higi. Again, like this is not secret stuff, right? This is well-known thing. These are best practices. Only 4 people on the team had access to production environment. That
Mm,
is it. It was me, the CTO, my VP of engineering, my head of platform, and one other guy. That is it. Rest of the team never touched the production environment. They always worked in
really, only
dev
four
and
people.
staging environment. Only 4 people. So if a breach happened, guess what? Who got compromised? There are only 4 people, right? And if anything happened to all 4 of us, there was access in the bank in a vault where our CFO or the attorneys could go and get access to it and then could give it to somebody else, right? As a
Mm,
physical way how you can actually go access something that, yeah, and that's it, right? So we had operational controls, we have contractual controls, right? Where we did a lot of stuff, and we have technical controls around this aspect of it, audit logs and all that needs to happen, and everything that, and we decided like, okay, fine, can we store data that is not human readable? Can be stored in a format that is not human readable, right? So
mm,
we stored everything, and yeah, I mean, you can easily convert it all the stuff, but like it's just extra step to add to it, right? So you can save everything in binary JSON. Then even if somebody gets access to it, you encrypt the data and do all the stuff. You just make layers and layers and layers of complexity over it. I remember the best example, right? So one of my engineers came up with this idea that if you know, on a kiosk, remember, we are talking about kiosk 2012. iPad has
yeah,
not come out yet, right?
right.
Screens aren't that great. So the more characters you have in a password, the horrible the experience was, right? So we found the 6 characters were the optimal, where people were happy with it. 8 characters or any kind of weird characters, they would just not go by it. And I said, like, like the NIST standard is 8 character passwords. How do we do this the right way? And so what's the first principle? Why 8 characters, right? So you go to first principle thinking.
Right.
Then you realize it's about the entropy. Like how long does it take to brute force 8 character password, right? So it's like, what are the other ways you can increase entropy of a password decryption other than this? And we realize that it's all about time. How long does
Mm,
it take, right? So the 8 character is leading to a time. Like, is there any other way to induce time in decryption?
mm,
So we came up with this architecture called bcrypt, which induces time for decryption.
okay.
And we realized if we add 10 milliseconds as a lag time to decryption and double it every time you guess the password wrong, so 10, then
Hmm.
20, then 40, then 80, 10 milliseconds for a human is very fast. You don't even know anything's
Yeah,
happening, right?
yeah.
But for a automated brute force attack thing, it's crippling. And after 10 tries, you just lock the account down,
Mm,
right? So very simple thing. So we had 6 character passwords with 2 millennia entropy. So look, will take you 2,000 years for brute force figuring that thing out, right?
yeah.
Like, like I'm just talking about things that are, when you think about first principle thinking, like why are you doing certain things? People don't ask like those things. Um,
Isn't that amazing? We spend all of our time doing training, but when it comes to basing things
yeah,
off of a very clear set of principles
yeah,
which stand the test of time. I think it's
yeah,
even the same thing with like judgment and decision making. Like,
yeah,
how do people get
yeah,
good at making like good decisions? Like, I mean,
yeah,
I never like took a class on that. Like,
yeah,
that just came through a lot of trial and error and like thinking through it. Like, what do I actually use as
yeah,
a
yeah,
matrix to make a good sound decision?
yeah.
You
We
know?
don't ask the why enough, right? Why? Um, why is, like, I remember my first experience, our first one thinking was I was on call as a resident, and there was a patient who had a young kid, I think it was 10-year-old, 12-year-old, who got a CT scan for abdominal pain, and the appendix was 1 centimeter in diameter. But the problem was the kid didn't have right abdominal pain.
Yeah.
And attending goes like, "Oh, there's appendicitis." I was like, "But the symptoms don't match what we are saying." It's like, "No, but the appendix is large." It's like, "Why is appendix 1 centimeter and you're calling it appendicitis?" Like, "Well, that's the cutoff." It's like, "But how did that come up?" And you realize that the cutoff came from a paper written 1960s in which they autopsied 100 people and did a normal distribution of appendix size and did a 95% like student standard deviation cutoff as the normal appendix size, and that has stayed forever. And we're applying the same principle to kids and adults and all the same. And it's like,
It's
oh,
crazy.
yeah, we should probably not be doing this anymore. But anyway, that was my first real, use of why and going and investigating like where did the appendix threshold came from to call something appendicitis above a centimeter. But since
Wow.
then, a lot has changed. But
All right. So it seems to me that every one of your companies that you've started, there's been a sort of a personal reason behind it. Let's talk about Hopper. Let's talk about what the focus is, what the why is, and like share a little
yeah,
bit more about that.
yeah. So I think as what a lot of people would realize on this call, on this podcast is um, radiology is in a crisis right now, right? The imaging volume is just going up, and not because we are doing unnecessary imaging, right? I don't think majority of doctors are intend to harm the patient, right? There's a
Yeah.
reality of the world, right? Our population is aging, more people are surviving longer, right? And that's where imaging is needed, right? Imaging has
Yeah.
become way more objective,
Hmm.
is providing a lot more data that we never had, right, before. And now drugs are coming out that require imaging to understand dosimetry for those particular diseases, or even looking for complications of those diseases. In pressures on ER turnaround times, like you can
Hmm.
get the patient much faster out of the ER if you do imaging. So Andy Rosenkrantz, one of my former residents in Maryland, just published a paper in September of last year showing that the CT volume in ED is actually increasing at 7% annually. Previous, the assumption was 5% growth on imaging, but we are seeing 7% and accelerating, right? If you look at his papers
Hmm.
from September 30th in the Radiology Journal, it's actually accelerating. And um, but we are not training more radiologists. Um, So in 2016, 2017, I started getting, people reaching out like, "Hey, you left clinical practice to different things and I'm burning out. And how do I do this?" And obviously my wife's radiologist, so I would see her, like she joined one of the academic practices here in Chicago. There were 12 body imaging radiologists in 2014 when she started.
Hmm.
When she left last year, she was the only one remaining. They were not able to hire
Whoa.
anybody back, right? So can you
Whoa.
imagine this is a transplant center, a cancer center, and you don't have a fellowship trained body imaging radiologist? Like
That's
how
wild.
and a residency program? You're going to train residents with no fellowship trained body imaging faculty training them? Like, and by body imaging I mean chest, abdomen, pelvis, right? Like most of the body. And when she
Wow.
left, she was the last one who was doing this at that academic center, right? And then why did she leave? Like same issues, the volume just going up to the roof. She was coming home every day, completely tired, fatigued, have dinner, and she would still stay up till midnight finishing up that day's work.
Hmm.
And again, if you're an academic tertiary care center, you're not seeing so simple stuff. I mean, these are cancer patients with multiple scans or transplant with multiple things. Anatomy is completely deranged. If you don't understand what the surgeon did in the, how did they did anastomosis, what they removed, what they not removed, how you tell what is going on? Because the anatomy is completely different now, right? So the amount of
Hmm.
effort you have to spend time understanding what is happening is very complex. People think, oh, AI can replace all this stuff. Like, no, like the things I did, what my wife does, like there's a lot of cognitive overload to really understand what is happening to the patient,
Yeah.
right? Because
The brain doesn't just shut off. You're like constantly,
yeah,
it's constantly working.
yeah, people think it's detection. It's not, right? What we are doing is we're generating a narrative for the clinician who ordered this exam to tell them what is happening. So it's a communication method, right? We're looking at what's in the
Yeah.
images, converting them into pros that then another human who's going to make the clinical decision. So, like when I dictate a report, I would say depending on who ordered it, because I've learned over time, Doctor XYZ wants to know these things, Doctor ABC wants to know other things, and I would make sure I am addressing who has ordered it, whose patient it is, what service are they doing, what are they looking for, right?
Hmm.
Or even anticipating, right? Like if this patient come in, oh, he's going to probably go to the oncology service, oh, he's probably going to go to the surgery service, and let me make sure I cover these things because they would ask me immediately afterwards, right? So that's how you kind of think about all the stuff, right? And so the turning point for me was, so me and my two younger boys have this text internally we call the boys chat, and I work out of my basement. My elder one was sitting in his room on the second floor, and second floor, and my younger one was in the kitchen. And we heard the garage door open. The elder one text to the boys chat, "How's Mama's mood? Should I come down to give her a hug, or stay in my room?" And the younger one goes, "Stay in your room." And I was just like, my kids should not be deciding if they want to give their mom a hug based on how her radiology work was. I was like, I gotta go fix this thing.
Mm.
So that kind of became my like, all right, I need to go figure out what's going on. Like, I started working in machine learning, computer vision, AI in 2003, 4, and this is 2017, and in my mind, all this should have been solved by now, and why hasn't? So that led to me and Robert Backus, who was my first employee at Higi and became my CTO eventually, having a discussion together on a napkin, like if we had to do this again, like radiology stuff, like how do we think about like, and I told him about this memo I wrote in Microsoft in 2012 about building a platform to accelerate AI development, because I didn't think we should be building disease by disease AI models. We need to build larger models that can do hundreds and thousands of things at the same time. But how do you do it at a scale? How do you do it different was the approach. So I'm describing him what I was thinking, and Robert had worked at Merge Healthcare, which is a PACS company, right? So
Hmm.
he had some background in this aspect of it, and we started thinking about how we would approach it. At the same time, what happened was a lot of the attention is all you need paper comes out from Google, and my former computer vision machine learning team at Microsoft, who had all moved on, right? Some went to autonomous vehicles, some went to Meta, some went to
Right.
DeepMind. They start sending me, hey, Khan, look at this transformer architecture. Remember your memo you wrote? This would be a better architecture for this, not a CNN-based platform that you had described. So that led to me collecting all of them in an Airbnb and fleshing this out, right? So I got some more former fellows from Maryland, some former engineers from Microsoft, some Higi people, all in 3 days at an Airbnb, like, hey, what are we going to do? So the goal out came back that we need to build a platform that we can shorten the AI development time frame. And we need to provide all the components that are needed. One of the other realization we had was that we knew when we were training these models ourselves that models don't generalize well unless either you have massive amount of data, like almost like all data from all time, or you have ability to fine tune it for
Right.
local needs, right? And
Right.
it was becoming very obvious that when you train a model in a particular data set, you go deploy in another patient demographic, even practice patterns are different, right? You train at Hopkins, you will scan a patient differently. You train in Stanford, you will do it
Hmm.
differently because
Hmm.
and those models don't perform the same way. So, and it sounds really, really hard to build your own AI model. Like how do we make this simple? That was became the tool. So, and the tools you need are, number one is data, right? How do you get the data? Like, well, yeah, with Microsoft and with Higi, I figured that piece out, right? How do I secure data? How do I do data? How do I
Yeah.
handle it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We had now decades of experience how to do this stuff. Plus, we'd built trust across health systems where we'd already deployed all these things that people kind of trusted this team to be able to do this. Next was, can we do large pre-trained models, right? Usually when people are building models, they're not training from scratch. They are using some CNN or transformer architecture that they're retraining on top of it. So like, how do we
Hmm.
do something that is built on trained from scratch on medical imaging data itself? So now we call them foundation models, but that was the kind of idea at that time. And then the entire tooling that is needed to train at scale, deploy at scale, validate, verify, scale, right? So if you do it at scale, let's say you're doing 1,000 models for hundreds of different companies, the scale and cost you can have is very different than one entity going building five, six, seven solutions around that. You will not be able to hit the scale to get the cost low enough around that aspect of it. So that became Hopper. We started with focusing on developers initially,
Hmm.
launched our API and SDKs and foundation models the summer of last year. And then at RSNA, we did a low code version of it. Now, somebody with a little bit of IT background can, without knowing any line of code, can build their own classification models, and rest is history.
That's amazing because how you kind of laid out the story, how you how you had these relationships, like everything basically compounded. And that sort of compounding is what allows you to really get to this particular new point
Yep.
and exponentially be able to help more people. When you think about the billion people impact, is that still true north for you always? And do your teams know that? The ones that you work with, do they
They
know
all
that
they
they
all know
all
that.
know?
Everybody knows it. Anybody I've helped knows this, because my ask always is like, if you are doing something that's going to impact a lot of people, I'll help
Mm,
you out with no ask in return,
mm.
because my motivation is very different.
Yeah,
And
for
a lot of
you,
people
it's
ask
about
me
the
like,
significance and the impact.
whenever my new admin joins to support me in every company, they always ask like, why do you have all these random like people on LinkedIn reaching out and you have to take these calls? Should I say no to them? I'm like, no, 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 no. I need to have at least three of these every week, because you never know
You
who
never
will come up
know.
with something idea that maybe, yeah, I mean, I think I told you the story, right? The number of people I meet now who say how I changed their life, I don't even remember talking to them,
It's crazy.
right?
That's how
Like,
you know you're having some immense impact. I mean, you obviously to that
right?
person, it's such a monumental moment, and
Yep.
you're like trying to database in your head, like I don't even remember having that conversation, but apparently
Yeah.
what I'm doing is working. So
Yeah. Random
keep doing
LinkedIn
the
reach
work.
out, had a 30-minute call, and somebody changed their career based on that feedback and created huge impact. Like, yeah, that's my goal. Even though I
Yeah.
don't remember the discussion, but the outcome happened. That's what I care about.
All right, we're getting closer to the end here. So I want to do
Yeah.
a little quick fire. Let's do a little
Sure.
fun. These are some things I've been thinking about. So,
Yeah.
um, one habit that one habit from your mom that still shows up in your leadership.
I think it's about caring.
Karen. All right. What about um, slide decks or whiteboards? Which one?
Whiteboards and every day.
All right. What about meetings before 8 a.m.? Necessary or avoidable?
I'm a late guy. It's my brain works after midnight, so I think
Okay.
it's avoidable.
Okay.
For me, it's
Okay.
avoidable.
All right. What about one, because you mentioned buzzwords earlier. What about one healthcare buzzword that you quietly dislike?
What's the word I dislike? I think it's HIPAA certification, because there's no such thing.
All right. And then just last question. I mean, if let's just say we're 10 years from now, um, if somebody looks back and studies your career, what do you hope that they don't miss?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think what they don't miss. is how do you do that, that all the things you do, you can do it while still being civil and still being humble
Yeah.
and still caring for people, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the archetype of the entrepreneur is that asshole. Make Sorry, I'm using
Yeah,
bad
you could,
words.
it's your
Pardon my
episode. You can do
French.
whatever you want.
Right? Like you have to be, busting
Shrewd,
everybody's
ruthless.
balls,
Yeah, you know,
ruthless, and things like that, right? No, you don't have to be, right? It doesn't mean, you can't be passionate, aggressive, getting things done, but you can do it while being humble.
totally. What is the best way for people to follow you, your work? Maybe just kind of give a little commercial about, Hopper, where they can follow things. I mean, because you're doing a number of different things. So I want to give
Yeah.
you the floor and then we'll wrap up.
Ho- Hopper is easy, hopper.ai website. I'm easy to get hold of through on LinkedIn. I respond to messages. Just find me on LinkedIn. We have plenty of way to contact us on Hopper's website, through Hopper's social media channels. We're pretty active in that aspect of it. Just tag us.
Yeah.
If you're trying to message us or things like that, more than happy to do it. If you have ideas to explore on Hopper's platform, we launched our Catalyst program where we're looking for academic researchers with crazy ideas. We're providing compute resources, data, and expertise to help achieve those. And then practices that want to deploy their own AI models but don't have people, we have forward deployed services that we bring on board and help them do that aspect of it too, right? In my mind, every practice has unique problems, right? So they
Yeah.
can't be waiting for a vendor to come up with a product. Like, here's a platform that help you do that. So what do you
Mhm.
want to do? And if you don't have the teams, we'll help you build it.
That there's one overarching theme throughout this conversation that I'm hitting on. It's like your sense of curiosity and adventure. Like, and it's because you have taken those adventures that those have led and created more opportunities. And yeah, you do care. I think, like I mentioned before, sometimes, we go through life and we look for superheroes, but we don't actually realize that there's superheroes living under the roof that we're in growing up. And
I,
you
I,
recognizing that early on and then going out and doing something and then having this big, audacious goal of, look, your work is about significance and impact. And those that are aligned around significance and impact will absolutely run through walls with you because they know what true north is. And so, for those that are listening, if you're listening to this, what my take is number one is good guys do finish first. You could be kind, still have really high standards, and still get a lot of stuff done, and still make a lot of progress and make a lot of impact. So that's like a really cool thing to leave with. And then the other thing is just your ability to remain curious, no matter how much worldly success others might perceive you to have that you've obtained. There's still a level of curiosity you have, and like you said, be humble, um, and keep moving ahead. You can always get better and get better. So, for those tuning in, if there is a topic that you want us to explore, or even a leader that you want to hear from, drop me a note, shoot us a comment. Let us know what you think of today's conversation. I mean, would you just mind sharing it? If you found it valuable, yeah, share it. Let us know. So, this platform for me, it's about community. It's not just about content. So, thank you for listening. Keep building with purpose, and we will see you next time on the Advancing
Absolutely.
Healthcare Innovation Show. Good to see you.
Pleasure, Michael.